Welcome to Wrestling's Hottest Audacious Takes, hosted by myself, Aaron Rift of NoDQ.com. In this video series, I read some of your boldest opinions about professional wrestling, and then I give my responses. Let's take a look at today's topics. Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25 being idolized has ruined wrestling and modern ring psychology. That is indeed a hot take, which I very much disagree with. When I watched WrestleMania 25 for the first time, I was bored with most of the show, up until Shawn Michaels got in the ring with The Undertaker. When they were out there wrestling at WrestleMania, that was the first time that I really felt like it was WrestleMania. They went out there, had a phenomenal match, back and forth, competitive. To me, it was about as close to a perfect wrestling match that you could ask for. No gimmicks, no outside interference, just two top main event level characters battling it out with The Undertaker's streak on the line. In my opinion, if you are somebody out there that is looking to become a wrestler, this is the match I would tell you to watch if you want to become good at wrestling. Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 25. To me, about as close to perfect as you can ask for. Seth Rollins is extremely overrated. Once again, I disagree with this one. Seth Rollins, to me, is all around an excellent performer. He is very good in the ring. I would say he's great in the ring. He can perform at a high level. He has the athleticism. He can also slow it down a bit and tell a story in the ring. As far as his promos go, he's one of the best talkers. He goes out there. He rarely stumbles on his words. He's very convincing when he's talking. I don't feel like he's reciting a script. He comes off authentic. His overall personality, he's always looking to change things up. At first he was the architect. He always had good fashion sense with his attire, sometimes a little bit over the top, but it's professional wrestling. It's supposed to be over the top. Seth Rollins, when I look at all of the attributes, he's one of the most well-rounded. While the product is hit or miss lately, I'll still gladly take what we've gotten recently over anything Vince McMahon ever produced. I agree with this 100%. I'm with you on this hot take. Vince McMahon did a lot for the industry. Without Vince McMahon, I might not be here. In fact, I probably would not be doing this. Vince McMahon had some brilliant ideas. He also had his fair share of lousy ideas. WWE has its ups and downs. In 2025, they cooled off a little bit from the previous year, but WWE, prior to Vince McMahon stepping away, it was rough to watch at times. I really do believe that Vince was out of touch. He did not know what his audience truly wanted. He could only go by what worked for him in the past, and I think wrestling just passed him by. You go back and look at 2018, 2019, even 2021 WWE, it was very difficult to watch at times. Less is more. Blood, swearing, kicking out of finishers should be kept extremely rare, so when they are used, it actually means something special. I very much agree with this one. I think that you do want wrestlers to be able to go out there and be able to give their best performance as possible, but that doesn't mean having things done excessively. I think too much of anything can be a negative and can do more harm than good. When I see somebody going through a table, that's cool. But when it's done every single show, it starts to lose its impact because you've already seen it. You want to save these top moments for the right times. Just like a singer. Maybe they can hit the high notes all the time. Doesn't mean they should. The key is to find the right moments to make the biggest impact possible and give somebody a memorable moment that they will not forget. If you do the same thing all the time, people will not remember it. Everything will just blend together. There's nothing wrong with wrestlers slapping their leg whenever they kick. The slap is done for an acoustic effect, similar to how wrestlers from the past would stomp the ground when throwing a punch. A lot of people in the business criticize wrestlers slapping their leg, but have no problem with those that stomp the mat when they throw a punch. That is hypocrisy. I do agree for the most part. I feel like the sound effects can really add to the match. However, like with magicians, you want to be able to protect the illusion. If it's too obvious what somebody is doing, then it gives away the specialness of what you're watching. When you have somebody kicking and slapping their leg and it's blatantly seen on television and you know what they're doing, the illusion is gone. I think that it's definitely a positive when you can do it in an effective manner that isn't so obvious what you're doing. That's the real key, and that's a combination of the wrestler making it less obvious and also the people that are producing the show and the production team making sure that those moments are not as noticeable. Bret Hart started the Attitude Era. Without him and his heel turn, DX doesn't get started up, Vince McMahon's Mr. McMahon character isn't created, and Stone Cold Steve Austin isn't established. I think this is a very valid point. Bret Hart really was a key to the Attitude Era being developed. Bret Hart, he turned heel after years of being the company's top babyface. He went out there, he vented his frustrations, he dropped the profanity on live television. That was Bret Hart. He did have that attitude in early 1997, and that really was the blueprint for what the Attitude Era ultimately became. Bret Hart elevated Steve Austin. Bret Hart elevated Vince McMahon, although it wasn't the way Vince would have liked it. But nonetheless, Bret did play a role in these characters being developed. I tend to say that Bret Hart, without him, there would be no Attitude Era. Bullet Club is overrated, oversaturated, and most wrestlers in there are only popular because they're associated with the Too Sweet. I do agree with you on this. I never really understood the appeal of the Bullet Club other than they were very good wrestlers that bonded together and formed a faction. I was not really on the Bullet Club train when they were coming out there and saying Too Sweet. To me, it was just knocking off the NWO. Now, after a while, I think you can borrow things from the past. It's hard to come up with new ideas, new catchphrases, and so forth. You want to pay tribute to those before you, which is fine, but when it feels like you're blatantly copying them and making money off of it, that's when I start to sour on the idea, and that's how I felt about Bullet Club. So I'm with you on that. I do think they were a bit overrated. They still made an impact on the business, but the whole NWO knockoff part of it, I wasn't a fan of. Vince McMahon's sophomore humor is missed. I would tend to say no for the most part. The problem is Vince McMahon's idea of what was funny was often gross. Vince was a big fan of toilet humor, and to me, it missed the mark more times than it hit. I do like the idea of some humor being on a wrestling show. I think as a variety brand, you want to have all sorts of different parts of the show. A little bit of drama, a little bit of comedy, a little bit of romance. You want to have something for everybody. I do think wrestling needs humor, but Vince's vision, it was a bit much at times. I would say 7 or 8 times out of 10, it did not hit the mark, at least for me personally. So I largely disagree with you. I really don't miss Vince's style of humor. On the right occasion, it did work, but more times than not, I thought it flopped. That concludes this edition of Wrestling's Most Audacious Takes. What were your thoughts on these opinions? Leave a comment and subscribe to the No DQ YouTube channel for the latest wrestling news and discussion.